It's me, Galen. Galen's got Parkinson's. This is how I used Dungeons and Dragons character generation to turn this figure into an officer for my Sudan campaign set in the 1880s. Whenever I play any game, I use characteristics from Dungeons and Dragons to generate the character that I'm going to be. Now, the other players in a historical game don't know that, and they don't do it, but I always do it. I remember a game recently where we were playing a game set in Africa in the First World War, and I was a German commander. But I was a low-ranking German commander, and I'd done my character. He was loyal. I knew that he was of a military tradition. His family were a military family. He was high-bred. So I knew that he followed orders to the letter. So when the commander of our unit told my young lieutenant, who was 19 years old, to hold a trench and give no ground and not surrender. That's what he did. And he got killed because he wouldn't surrender. And after the game, people were saying, oh, well, you should have pulled back. I couldn't. Nobody was giving me any orders to pull back. Nobody told me I could pull back. I was told to stay there. So I stayed there. I remember years ago played a game, and I was a tank commander of a Sherman in Italy, 1944, and we were up above Rome in a snowy pass, and there were tanks coming along behind. But we were at the front of this ravine, and I broke down. I didn't really. I just radioed through and told the commander that I'd broken down. And the reason why I broke down was because I'd done a personality check on my character, and he was a coward. So every time I got told to do anything, I made an excuse for not doing it. Sometimes I went the wrong way. Must have driven him up the wall. But that was the character I was playing. You know, what can I tell you? So this person I'm going to use in my Sudan campaign. The way we play our Sudan campaign, lower ranking officers, lieutenants, command a platoon. I call it platoon, 10 men, and then a captain would command 3 platoons, so he would have 30 men including 3 officers. A major would command 3, I call it a company. A major would command 3 companies, or a captain might control a group of infantry and a group of artillery, because they're mixed, they're different branches. A major might have to come in if you're then including artillery, if you've got lancers and hussars, whatever. It's not super complicated, it's just the way I do things. So I'm going to generate a new officer, the way I do that is I throw a d20. Now, I've done this really quick for you. I have a more complicated table for that, but I've done complicated tables on some of my other videos. So all I've done is, in my little diary, I've written down all the things for a sort of medieval peasanty world, and I've gone from, I'm going to throw a d20. So if I get a 1 or a 2, he's a slave, and I'm going all the way up to, if he gets a 20, he's a member of the royal family. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to throw a d20, and it's going to tell me what his family were like in history. Oh, right, okay. So his family in history are 14. So that's a soldier or a member of the military. Well, I know he's going to the Sudan, so I'm not going to make him a naval officer, and I know I'm not going to make him an airman. That would be weird. So he's from a military family. I don't know what that means. That could mean like Churchill. fought in the Boer War. Dad was a politician. He goes right back to John Churchill, Marlborough, that sort of family. I'm from a military family. Highest rank anyone in my family's ever held is sergeant. In the First World War, my great granddad was a sergeant in the garrison artillery. But my dad was in the army, my brother's been in the army, etc., et al., So I'm from a military family, but I'm not like Churchill. There are levels. So now what I'm going to do, I know I'm from a military family, but now I'm going to dice for what my social standing is now. So my social standing now is serf. Well, serf doesn't apply to Victorian England, but we know what it is, don't we? So I would say in Victorian England, I'm making this up now because I didn't know what was going to happen. So let me think. I'm going to say, if I thrown slave, that would have been someone who was an ex-con, a jailbird, a thief, a rogue, a miscreant, a ne'er-do-well, a scallywag. And I'm going to say the next step up from that is going to be labourer, coal miner, street cleaner, what my family really were. My family always seemed to have a shovel in their hands and be covered in mud. To be honest, if we were only covered in mud, they probably felt themselves lucky. So I get that, I understand that. So he's got a history, a bit like me then in that case, isn't he? Because I know I had breaking the mould, I was a teacher, which don't fit the thing, but hey, that's just a pretend. So I'm from a military family because all my family have been in the military. And our general status was my dad was a collier, coal miner. My granddad was a collier, a coal miner. I mean, my dad was a coal miner after he came out of the war, having been badly injured. So I'll still say he was from a military background, but he was forced after that to do something else. So I get that, okay. But now I've got a problem because my Sudanese character has to be an officer. He has to be a lieutenant. So what I shall do is have a little break, do some research, and I'll get back to you. I've had a bit of research. I found 3 examples online of soldiers, rankers, shall we say, who gained commissions and who were in the army at the time of Khartoum, Gordon of Khartoum, and so on. They weren't necessarily in the Sudan. I'll say that first off. The one I like the most isn't necessarily where I thought I was going with this character, but I'll persevere and you'll see why. And he was called Henry Finn, F-I-N-N. Harry Finn. He joined the army as a young man. He joined the cavalry. He was in the Lancers, 21st Lancers. In one of the Afghan wars, he distinguished himself. He got mentioned in dispatches and the Distinguished Conduct Medal, which for the rank he was very unusual. He then continues with a very illustrious career of action. And at some point after the Afghan war, he's offered a commission, which was rare. It happened, but it was rare. It was even rarer that a ranking soldier being offered a commission accepted it. A lot of stigma. Even though the days of having money bought you a commission were gone, you had to have some nous about you. There was still a stigma, and most of the officers were, let's be right, posh chaps, been to the right school. But anyway, Harry did accept the commission. He does end up in the Sudan. Now, he doesn't end up in the Sudan when I want him to. He ends up in the Sudan 10 years later, 20 years later, because he's at the charge at the Battle of Omdurman. I don't want that. So I'm not doing that. I'm compressing it a bit. I'm fitting it to what I want. But there's a reason. I can justify Harry being an officer, because he was. I can justify Harry having the DCM, because he did. I also know from my fairly brief research that he works as a quartermaster. He works as a musketry instructor. So I can look at him as having a sort of good rapport with the men. Perhaps he's very much of a kind mentor of a character. So when I do his other characteristics, for example, his strength, I'll do that, hang on. This is pure Dungeons and Dragons. His strength is 15. It's okay, that's above average, isn't it? And his charisma is, let's hope for a decent one, 17. Ooh, that's nice. So he's very charismatic. I could see that, quite dashing. And because of what I know about him as brave and receiving all of these accolades, including the offer of promotion and the fact that he trains men, he acts as a quartermaster, I'm going to say, and I'm going to write on his character sheet, that he's very empathetic. His men like him. The other officers, maybe not so much, thinking about the times, but his men love him. And I prefer that. I'm going to say, I don't want to be too obvious, not exactly sharp, but maybe that sort of devil may care attitude. Harry, yeah, okay, so Henry, my granddad was called Henry James, but everybody called him Harry. Now he was from Lancashire, but we lived in Yorkshire. So I'm going to say Henry Finn being called Harry, in my head now, puts him in Yorkshire, Lancashire. Well, I'm a Yorkshireman. My family joined up with the King's Own Yorkshire Light Infantry, the Coilies. I don't, as I sit here now, know if the Coilies were in the Sudan. I don't even know if they existed in the Sudan. Certainly light infantry existed, but I don't know if we called them the Coilies. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to do it now, but what I am going to do, I'm going to go now to my research and I'm going to find out, because I'm going to have him born in Doncaster, the same as me. I'm going to say, if you were born in Doncaster in 1852, like Harry, and you joined the regular army, where would you be likely to go? Something else I think is important to me is, as I do this, although I am not recreating a real person, Henry Finn, before I started doing this, I'd never heard of Henry Finn. Now, I have heard of him, and I'm able to talk about him in some abstract way to you. And so perhaps in a wargamey way, I am paying homage to the memory of a man who served his country. I'd like to think, if someone in the future finds something to do with my own personal service and they turned me into a character, that they find out about me and they try and make. Can you imagine what it'd be like that? They might look at YouTube in 100 years and go, "Wow, that's a nutter." Whoa! When they come to paint my face because I'm big and fat, because we need a lot of flesh. Get the extra flesh tones. This is a big lad. I digress. I do that, don't I? Anyway, turn out joke.